That was the fall of 2018. Afghanistan, Kandahar province. Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. We were deployed to the southern part of Kandahar, in a place called Panjwai. On paper, the area had been under coalition control for over 6 years. But anyone who'd spent more than 72 hours there knew the truth. The color-coded map hanging in the operations center had almost nothing to do with what was actually happening on the ground. My name is Christopher M. Reyes, retired staff sergeant. The story I'm about to tell doesn't exist in any official record. There's no sitrep, no casualty report, no satellite imagery that can verify what I'm about to say. I didn't talk about any of this for 5 years. Not because someone held a gun to my head and told me to keep quiet, but because even now, I'm not sure whether what I saw that night was real or something my brain fabricated under extreme stress. But there's one thing I can't deny. That machine, the thing they called Ghost Murmur, it picked up something, heartbeats that didn't belong to this world. Before we get into what happened, I want to talk about something first. Not about war, not about fear, but about what we usually call reality. Stay in the military long enough, and you learn something. Human definitions of real have never been determined by our eyes or ears. They're determined by our equipment. Before night vision, darkness was an absolute barrier. You couldn't tell whether the figure 20 meters out was your buddy or someone holding an AK, so all you could do was pray. Before thermal imaging, a concrete wall meant total cover. You could sit behind it, smoke, catch your breath, pray, and believe you were safe. Then technology came along, and those once solid boundaries got punched through like paper. We live in a reality defined by sensors. And Ghost Murmur, it redefined the boundary. It wasn't anything mystical. Strip it down, and it was a quantum heartbeat detector. I won't get into the physics. Put simply, it used quantum-level magnetic field sensing to pick up the extremely faint electromagnetic pulses generated by a biological heartbeat. Standard heartbeat detectors max out at about 50 meters, and they get heavily degraded by obstacles like concrete or rock. But Ghost Murmur was different. Its quantum sensors could detect a heartbeat hundreds of meters away, punching through several meters of rock and pinpointing the source with precision. The Pentagon built it for one reason: the caves in Afghanistan. Taliban and Haqqani fighters had carved out thousands of kilometers of tunnel networks through the mountains. Send a clearing team in, and you were sending them to die. Stay out, and they could hide underground forever. Ghost Murmur was designed to solve that. Stand at the cave entrance, power it up, wait a few seconds, and it tells you if there are people inside, how many, and roughly where they are. Our company got 3 prototype units in September 2018 as part of field testing. At the time, we thought it was a miracle tool. What no one considered was this: what if it detected heartbeats where there were no people? Anyway, let's go back to October 17th, 2018. I remember the date clearly, not because anything remarkable happened at first, but because it started out painfully boring. We'd been at a forward operating outpost in Panjwai for 11 days. Same routine every day: daytime patrols, nighttime watch, occasional visits to nearby villages to drink tea with the elders and pick up bits of intel. The situation was strangely quiet. Too quiet. Quiet enough that even the old hands in the platoon were getting uneasy. Sergeant Mark Thompson, a 9-year Ranger, said to me one night on watch, "This kind of quiet's not a good sign, Reyes. It's always calm, right before storm." I didn't think much of it. At around 14:30 on October 17th, Captain Evans called us into the briefing room. The AC was busted. It felt like a sauna in there. The air smelled like sweat and cheap coffee. The satellite image projected on the wall showed mountainous terrain about 40 kilometers northwest of Kandahar, near the Helmand border, well outside our usual patrol area. "We got a joint op this evening," Evans said, his voice flat. A platoon from the 82nd Airborne was conducting recon in that area yesterday. About 6 clicks northeast of Awadi, they found a cave entrance. Thermal shows a clear heat signature beneath it, likely a mid-sized hide site, maybe 8 to 12 personnel. The 82nd has eyes on the area, but their platoon leader is requesting support. They don't have the right gear for cave clearing. He paused, scanning the room. "We're the closest unit, and we've got Ghost Murmur." That name stirred a low murmur of its own. The 3 prototypes have been sitting locked in the armory. We never actually used them in a real operation. We tested them in training. The machine beeps, some data pops up, and the instructor tells you, "Congrats, there's a dummy behind that wall." Real-world use was a different story. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Does this thing actually work? Here's the plan. Evans continued. At 1730, two Black Hawks insert us at an LZ roughly 2 clicks southwest of the objective. We link up with the 82nd Platoon. They guide us to the cave. Our tasks. First, use Ghost Murmur to scan inside and confirm enemy numbers and positions. Second, if we get a clear hostile read, we go in and clear the cave. Third, if the structure is too complex or there's any indication of civilians, we pull back and let EOD handle sealing it. Simple enough. Textbook cave clearing op. We'd run it 100 times in training. We geared up around 1630. I checked my M4, PQ-15 laser, and /PVS 31S. Battery's good. 7 mags loaded with M855A1. My vest had the usual IFAK, tourniquet, chem lights, spare batteries. Everyone looked like a recruiting poster. But one thing stuck with me. Before we stepped off, when First Sergeant Rodriguez pulled the Ghost Murmur units from the armory, I noticed something off about his expression. It wasn't excitement or curiosity. It was unease, the kind you can't quite explain. I asked him what was wrong. He just shook his head. This thing, when it runs its startup checks, something about it feels off. Can't put my finger on it. Probably just me. I didn't press. The first sergeant was superstitious, never trusted anything that ran on electricity. He'd broken 3 GPS units on a single patrol once, and ever since, he stuck to maps and a compass. So when he handed the Ghost Murmur over to our tech, O'Brien, I chalked that look up to his usual distrust of electronics. When the Black Hawks lifted off, the Kandahar sky was turning red. It was one of the most beautiful sunsets I'd ever seen. The entire western horizon looked like it was on fire, orange light cutting through the dust along the ridge lines, turning the edge of the world into something like a painting. I sat by the open door, legs hanging out, wind slamming into my face. Below us was a barren land, torn apart by war, cracked terrain, abandoned mud brick villages scattered like the bones of some prehistoric creature. The briefing mentioned this area had once been a major Taliban supply node back in 2012. A Marine battalion had cleared it out, and no coalition forces had gone back in since. 6 years, more than enough time for something to reclaim those caves. When we touched down, the rotor wash kicked up a wall of dust. We jumped out, crouched low, moved clear the downwash, and set up a temporary rally point in a dry riverbed. The 82 ND's liaison was already there, a young lieutenant, fresh goggle marks still etched into his face. He pointed toward a ridgeline about 1 kilometer northeast. Cave entrance is at the base of that ridge. You won't see it from here. You've got to crest that hill first. Our observation post is about 400 meters southeast of the ridge. No movement in the last 2 hours. We moved out along the dry riverbed. By then it was fully dark. Night vision painted everything in that familiar green. The terrain was worse than it looked on the satellite imagery. Uneven ground, eroded rock formations, hard going. I was 5th in the stack. Mark Thompson ahead of me. Behind me was Private Martinez, 3 months in the unit, kept stepping on loose rocks, making too much noise. "Martinez, watch your footing," I whispered over comms. He didn't answer, but he got quieter. About 20 minutes later, we reached the 82 ND's observation position. It was a natural rock platform overlooking a steep slope. The cave entrance sat at the bottom, recessed into the rock face. From our angle, you could only see part of it, a black, half-open mouth set into the mountain. The vegetation around it was almost non-existent. A few dead shrubs, sparse grass, everything trembling slightly in the night wind. I raised my binoculars and studied the area around the cave entrance. Everything looked normal, or at least normal by Afghan standards, where the definition boils down to no muzzle flashes, no explosions, no one shouting at you. There were no signs of human activity, no footprints, no discarded trash, no cigarette butts. Nothing. Captain Evans pulled the key personnel together for a quick huddle. The plan was simple. The 82nd would maintain outer security and provide fire support, while our company would move in, use Ghost Murmur to scan, and then decide whether to enter or pull back. The operation was given the call sign Echo. "O'Brien, Evans said, turning to our tech. Ghost Murmur ready? O'Brien nodded. He'd already taken the device out of its case and assembled it. Ghost Murmur looked like an oversized tablet, about twice as thick as a standard laptop. The front was a high-resolution display, the back a sensor array. A foldable antenna extended from the top, supposedly to enhance signal reception. O'Brien held it carefully, like a father cradling a newborn. Startup diagnostics complete, sir, he reported. Battery at 97%. Sensors calibrated. Environmental magnetic baseline established. Ready to scan. Evans checked his watch, then looked at each of us. All right, let's move. Check comms. Maintain radio silence unless it's urgent. Thompson, Reyes, you're up front. O'Brien in the middle. Martinez and Kovac bring up the rear. 5 meters spacing. If contact is called, take cover immediately. We started moving toward the cave. That 300-meter approach felt a lot longer than it should have. The ground was loose gravel and eroded rock. Every step made a soft, crunching sound. Through night vision, those sounds felt amplified, like the whole valley was whispering about us. I moved slowly, stopping every few steps to scan ahead and to the flanks, switching between NVGs and thermal. Nothing. Total silence. Too much silence. In other parts of Kandahar, nights always had noise. Dogs barking in distant villages, plastic sheeting rattling in the wind, occasional gunfire. Here, there was nothing, like the world had been muted. When we reached the cave entrance, something changed. It's hard to describe exactly what. Not temperature. The air felt the same, that dry, cool autumn night air. Not smell, at least not at first. It was something subtler, the kind of sensation that makes the hair on your arms stand up. Like your subconscious was setting off an alarm. Something's wrong here. Later, in a military psych course, I learned about something called threat perception threshold. The brain can register danger before your conscious mind identifies it. I used to think that was bullshit. That night, standing at that cave, I felt it. Thompson felt it too. He glanced at me. Even through night vision and goggles, I could see the alertness in his eyes. You feel that? He whispered. Yeah, I said. Like, someone's watching us from behind. Exactly. I turned and checked. Martinez and Kovac were about 10 meters back, crouched behind a rock. Everything looked normal. Further out, on the ridge, I could faintly see the glow of the 82 ND's optics. Nothing unusual, but that feeling didn't go away. O'Brien stepped up to the cave entrance with Ghost Murmur. He sat on a flat rock, adjusted the antenna, and started working. The screen cast a faint bluish-white glow across his face, giving him a cold, almost unnatural look. Beginning scan, he said, trying and failing to hide the tension in his voice. Depth set to 50 meters. Omnidirectional mode. Estimated scan time, 90 seconds. We took positions on either side of the entrance, rifles trained into the darkness. Inside was absolute black. Not the kind you get in a city when the lights go out. This was deeper, heavier, like light itself couldn't escape it. Through NVGs, I could only see about 15 meters and before the tunnel bent and vanished behind rock. The entrance was roughly 3 meters wide, 2 meters high. The floor was smooth stone, worn by water over time. The walls were irregular, with cracks and recesses just big enough for a person to squeeze into. Ghost Murmur started humming. Not metaphorically, the thing actually produced a low-frequency vibration you could feel through the ground, like a distant generator. The hum lasted about 30 seconds, then shifted into a steady, rhythmic beeping. O'Brien stared at the screen, frowning. O'Brien, what do you have? Evans asked over comms. Sir, scan's about 60% complete. Sensor readings are a little strange. How strange? O'Brien hesitated, and in that brief hesitation, I noticed something. The feeling of being watched disappeared. Just like that. Like someone had looked away. It didn't make me feel better. If anything, it made me more alert. Because when something watching you decides to stop, there are usually only two reasons. It gave up, or it started moving. Sir, O'Brien finally said, we've got a heartbeat signature approximately 35 meters inside the cave. One, Evans asked. Not multiple, just one, sir. Signal's very clear. Heart rate approximately 72 beats per minute, resting state. But what? The waveform is abnormal. A normal human heartbeat has a distinct pattern. P wave, QRS complex, T wave. It's very clear on Ghost Murmur's spectral analysis. This one, it's incomplete. It shows some P-wave and QRS characteristics, but there's no T-wave at all. And the overall cycle is about 0.3 seconds longer than a normal human. I've never seen anything like it. Not in training, not in the technical manual. There was a few seconds of silence. Could it be a malfunction? Evans asked. Diagnostics are clean, sir, and the signal is stable. Not noise. Continue the scan. Complete the full cycle. Check for additional signals within 50 meters. The scan resumed. The low hum returned, layered with that steady beeping. I crouched at the entrance, rifle aimed into the dark, feeling like I was waiting for a verdict. 35 meters. One person inside. Heart rate 72. Resting. What did that mean? It meant whoever, or whatever, was in there knew we were outside. And it wasn't running. Wasn't grabbing a weapon. Wasn't doing anything. Just waiting. Or maybe not waiting. Maybe it didn't care. Maybe it wasn't even a he. Scan complete, O'Brien said, his voice trembling slightly. Sir, within a 50-meter radius, there's only one heartbeat. Same position, approximately 35 meters inside, about 8 meters below the entrance elevation. No other life signs. But, stop saying but, O'Brien. Just say it. Sir, second scan matches the first exactly. Same signal, same waveform. The device isn't malfunctioning. But that signal, it's not human. At least, not a normal human. My first reaction wasn't fear. It was confusion. Not human. Then what? A dog? A cat? A goat? Sure, there could be animals in Afghan caves, but their heart rates and waveform signatures are completely different. A cat runs at 150 to 200 BPM. A goat, maybe 70 to 80, but the waveform is nothing like a human's. Ghost Murmur had built-in species classification. O'Brien wouldn't miss that. When he said, not normal human, it meant the system had already ruled out every known mammal. Captain Evans made a call. Looking back now, maybe it was reckless, but at the time, it felt like the only logical move. We need to identify that signal, he said. Thompson, Reyes, you're taking O'Brien inside. Move to within 20 meters of the source and run a directional scan. If it still can't be classified, we pull out and bring the data back. Do not engage unless it poses an immediate threat. Understood? Understood, sir. Thompson and I answered. We checked our gear. I made sure my helmet light was off. We'd rely on NVGs and weapon lights. Thompson cracked a chem light and tossed it into the cave. The green glow flickered against the walls, illuminating about 10 meters of rock. The ground inside looked damp. Small beads of moisture clung to the stone. And then there was the smell. Not rot, not decay, something older, like a room sealed for centuries. Dust, stillness, time itself sitting undisturbed. We stepped inside. Thompson took point. I followed about 2 meters behind him, with O'Brien right behind me, carrying Ghost Murmur. For the first 15 meters, the tunnel ran mostly straight. Then it started narrowing, down to about 2 meters wide, with the ceiling dropping low enough that I had to duck slightly as I moved. The rock walls showed no signs of human excavation. It looked like a completely natural formation, carved out over time. Occasionally, we stepped on small stalagmites jutting up from the ground. They snapped under our boots with sharp, brittle cracks that echoed through the enclosed space, amplified into something unsettling. Every few seconds, O'Brien called out readings. Signal still at 35 meters, no movement, heart rate steady at 72, waveform unchanged. At around 20 meters in, the tunnel suddenly bent sharply to the right, almost a 90-degree turn. Thompson stopped at the corner and raised a hand, signaling me to hold. He leaned forward slowly, peered around the bend, swept his weapon light across the passage ahead, then pulled back. Still a tunnel, he whispered. Another 15, maybe 20 meters. Looks like it opens up further ahead. I saw a wider shadow. We moved forward again. Past the turn, the passage widened and the ground began to slope downward. The rock underfoot grew slick, patches of moisture, even shallow puddles that made soft slapping sounds when we stepped through them. I slowed down, checking every step with my weapon light. The air grew more humid. That old, stale smell thickened, and something new mixed into it. A faint metallic scent, like rust. Not blood. At least, I didn't think it was blood. More like oxidized metal in a damp environment. 20 meters, O'Brien said suddenly. We're within 20 meters of the signal source. Device switching to directional scan mode. Results. Evan's voice came over the radio, distant and slightly distorted by the cave. Signal is directly ahead, 17 to 18 meters. Signal strength is 4 times what we got at the entrance. Waveform characteristics. Sir, I need to record this and get it back to analysis. This isn't something I can interpret. Hold on, Thompson said abruptly. He froze, body tense like a hunting dog catching a scent. What? I asked. Listen, I held my breath. The cave was already silent, so silent you could hear your own pulse, the faint rush of blood in your ears. But when I really focused, I heard something else. A faint rhythmic sound, coming from deeper in the cave. Not footsteps, not voices, not machinery. It was heartbeat, O'Brien said, his voice edged with a kind of fear I'd never heard from him before. That heartbeat Ghost Murmur picked up, we can hear it now. He was right. It was a heartbeat, a low, steady thump, slightly more than once per second. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was how loud it was. A normal human heartbeat, even in total silence, can't be heard from 17 meters away. The heart is small. The vibrations it produces are weak. You have to press your ear to someone's chest to hear it. We were standing 17 meters away, in open space, and we could hear it. That meant whatever was producing that heartbeat was massive, or its pulse was far stronger than anything we understood. Thompson looked at me. We didn't need words. We were thinking the same thing. Whatever was ahead of us, it wasn't human. It wasn't even anything we could classify. Sir, Thompson said over comms, I recommend immediate withdrawal. Why? Because whatever's 17 meters ahead of us, we can hear its heartbeat without equipment. Sir, you know what that means. Silence. 3 seconds. Long seconds. Approved. Fall back immediately. Maintain formation. Do not run. O'Brien. Confirmed data is recorded. We turn to pull back, and that's when Ghost Murmur screamed. A sharp, high-frequency alarm. Nothing like the steady scan beeps from before. O'Brien looked down at the cracked screen, and all the color drained from his face. The signal's moving. What? I spun back instinctively, weapon light cutting into the tunnel. Nothing. Just rock. Darkness. Moving toward us. Fast. About 4 meters per second. 4 meters per second. That's over 14 kilometers per hour. A human walking fast moves maybe 1. 4 meters per second. 4 meters per second in this terrain, slick rock, uneven ground. That's impossible without falling. Unless it didn't use legs. Unless it didn't move the way we do. Run, Thompson shouted. No more whispering. His voice slammed through the tunnel, echoing into chaos. We ran, but the tunnel was too narrow, the ground too slick. 3 of us crammed together, couldn't move fast. O'Brien was in front. He took 2 steps, slipped, and went down hard. Ghost Murmur flew out of his hands, smashed against the rock wall. The screen spiderwebbed instantly. Thompson yanked him up, shoved him forward. I brought up the rear, running, turning, running again. I couldn't see anything. My weapon light bounced wildly, flashing over rock, puddles, mineral veins. But that feeling, it was back, stronger, 100 times stronger. It was behind us. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. The way a blind man feels the sun on his face. It was close, very close, and then I smelled it. I can't describe that smell properly. The closest I can get, it was like ozone mixed with decaying organic matter and something like burn metal. But even that isn't right, because the smell wasn't static. It pulsed, like the heartbeat, every thump stronger. We hit the 90-degree turn. I glanced back one last time. For a split second, my light caught something at the far end of the tunnel. Not a shape, not a form. Light, a faint blue-white glow emanating from deeper inside. Not like a flashlight, not like a chem light. More like bioluminescence, like something alive, glowing in absolute darkness. It vanished. We burst out of the cave. The outside air had never felt so good. Dry, dusty, carrying that familiar mix of gunpowder and dirt. But compared to the cave, it was heaven. By the time we cleared the entrance, the 82nd guys already had weapons up. They'd heard Thompson shout, "Seal the entrance!" Captain Evans yelled. Our guys snapped into position, forming a defensive perimeter around the cave, every rifle trained on that black opening. I dropped behind a rock, stock of my M4 pressed in my shoulder, sights fixed dead center on the entrance. My breathing was ragged, heavy. Through night vision, the world rocked with every inhale. My heart was hammering, but I forced myself to listen, to hear if that heartbeat would follow us out. Nothing. Silence. Dead silence. How long did we wait? I don't know. 5 minutes. Maybe 15. Time didn't mean anything anymore. Eventually, the alarm stopped. The feeling of being watched faded, like a nightmare losing its color after you wake up. "O'Brien." Evan's voice came rough. "You get the data?" O'Brien looked down at the shattered ghost murmur in his hands. Slowly, he shook his head. "No, sir. The impact probably damaged the storage module. The device is dead. Won't power back on." Evans was silent for a long time. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Then this never happened. You understand me?" No one answered, but everyone understood. What happened after we got back to base, I won't go into detail. We filed a standard incident report, stating that Ghost Murmur had been damaged in a fall due to difficult terrain and the scan couldn't be completed. The cave was marked, pending further investigation, but no follow-up ever happened. O'Brien was reassigned 2 weeks later to a unit I'd never even heard of. Martinez lost his left leg to an IED 3 months later and was sent home. Thompson retired in 2019 and moved to a small town in Montana. We still talk sometimes, but he never brings up that night. And me? I kept thinking about that heartbeat. It wasn't human. Ghost Murmur was right. It wasn't human, but it was something's heartbeat. Something that exists outside the boundaries of how we define this world. Something that lives in rock and darkness. Those caves in Afghanistan, those underground spaces soaked in war and death, what do they hide? Over hundreds, thousands of years when the silence underground was first broken, what was it that opened its eyes? I don't know. Maybe I'm not supposed to know. But after that mission, I went digging through some records in the company archives. You know what I found? Before the first coalition clearing operation in that area back in 2002, there was an old Pashtun legend tied to those mountains in southern Kandahar. It went something like this. Deep in the mountains, there's a passage leading to the underworld. Its entrance is sealed by a massive black stone, carved with ancient symbols. The passage isn't meant for the living. If you stand at the entrance on a full moon night, you can hear a heartbeat coming from deep underground. It's the heartbeat of the earth, or something older than the earth. I always thought it was just superstition. But that night, in that cave, when I heard a heartbeat from 17 meters away, I finally understood the fear in the eyes of those old Pashtun men when they told that story. It wasn't fear of the unknown. It was the memory of something they had seen, something they had felt, something they would never be able to understand. Human beings expand the boundaries of perception with technology. We invented night vision so we could see in the dark. We invented thermal imaging so we could see through walls. We invented Ghost Murmur so we could hear what lies beneath the ground. But every time we open a door, there's more darkness behind it. The problem isn't that our technology isn't advanced enough. The problem is we've never stopped to ask ourselves, do we really want to hear the things we were never meant to hear? That machine picked up a heartbeat that didn't belong to humanity. But maybe the more terrifying question is this. How long had that heartbeat been there? Before Ghost Murmur, before we stepped into that cave, before the first human ever walked that land. It was already there, waiting for us to be foolish enough to open the door. I live in Arizona now. My nearest neighbor is 2 miles away. Every night before I go to sleep, I crack my window open and listen to the wind to distant dogs barking. Those sounds calm me. They belong to the human world. They're real. They make sense. But some nights, just as I'm about to fall asleep, I jolt awake. Not from a nightmare, from a feeling. That same feeling of being watched. It's faint, fleeting, like something very, very far away behind layers of rock. Turn its attention toward me for just a second. Then I put my hand on my chest, and I feel my heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. 72 beats per minute. Resting state. Complete waveform. At least for now. What about you? Are you sure your heartbeat is yours?